I sat at my cramped desk in the corner of Morrison and Associates, staring at the stack of invoices that seemed to multiply every time I looked away. Outside the floor-to-ceiling windows, downtown Chicago stretched endlessly under a gray December sky, the Willis Tower piercing through low-hanging clouds like a steel needle. Snow flurries danced against the glass, each flake catching the pale afternoon light before disappearing into the urban maze below. "Jessica!" The sharp voice of my supervisor, Patricia Williams, cut through the office chatter like a blade. "I need those quarterly reports formatted and printed by 5. And make sure you use the correct font this time." I glanced at the clock on my computer screen. 4:30. My fingers moved automatically across the keyboard, years of repetitive tasks having programmed the motions into muscle memory. Around me, my colleagues in their business suits moved with purpose, discussing million-dollar deals and strategic partnerships, while I remained invisible behind my monitor, just another piece of office furniture. The invitation to the annual Christmas party had been sitting on my desk for 2 weeks, its gold embossing mocking me every morning. Morrison and Associates spared no expense for their holiday celebration, renting out the entire top floor of the Fairmont Chicago with its panoramic city views. I had attended the past 3 years, always standing awkwardly by the appetizer table, nursing a single glass of wine while watching everyone else network and laugh. "You know, Jessica," Patricia said, appearing beside my desk with her arms crossed, her perfectly styled blonde hair catching the harsh office lighting, "I've been thinking about your performance review next month." My heart sank. Patricia had a particular talent for delivering bad news with a smile that never reached her eyes. She wore her authority like expensive perfume, overwhelming and impossible to ignore. "I think we need to have a serious conversation about realistic career expectations," she continued, her voice carrying just enough volume for nearby colleagues to overhear. "Some people are natural leaders, and others are better suited for support roles." The words stung more than I cared to admit. I had been working at Morrison and Associates for 4 years, starting as a temp and gradually earning a permanent position as an administrative assistant. Every day, I watched less qualified people get promoted around me while I remained trapped behind the same desk, handling the same mundane tasks. "I understand," I managed to say, my voice barely above a whisper. Patricia's smile widened. "Good. I'm glad we're on the same page. Oh, and Jessica, make sure you attend the party tonight. It's important to show company spirit, even in your position." The office began to empty as 5 o'clock approached. Colleagues gathered their coats and briefcases, discussing their weekend plans and complaining about the cold weather. I finished formatting the reports, printed them with military precision, and placed them neatly on Patricia's desk. The building felt hollow as the elevators carried away the last of the day's shift workers. I sat alone in the dimming office, watching the city lights begin to twinkle through the windows. Chicago in winter had a particular beauty, harsh and unforgiving but somehow magnificent in its brutality. The snow was falling heavier now, coating the streets below in pristine white that would soon turn to gray slush under countless footsteps. My reflection stared back at me from the darkened computer screen. 28 years old, brown hair pulled back in a practical ponytail, wearing the same navy blazer I had owned for 3 years. When had I become so invisible? When had I accepted that this was all I would ever be? The Christmas party started at 7, giving everyone time to go home and change into cocktail attire. I lived in a studio apartment in Lincoln Park, a 30-minute train ride from the office. The space was small but clean, with exposed brick walls and a single window that faced an alley. I had decorated it with thrift store furniture and plants that somehow thrived despite my irregular schedule. I stood before my closet, staring at the limited options. Most of my clothes were practical office wear, designed to blend in rather than stand out. Finally, I settled on a black dress I had bought for a wedding 2 years ago, simple but flattering. I applied makeup with more care than usual, trying to convince myself that tonight might be different. The Fairmont Chicago rose from the downtown skyline like a beacon, its windows glowing warmly against the night. Snow continued to fall steadily, muffling the sounds of traffic and footsteps. I paid the taxi driver and stood for a moment on the sidewalk, watching other party guests enter the hotel lobby in their expensive coats and designer shoes. The elevator carried me silently to the 42nd floor, where the party was already in full swing. The venue was spectacular, with floor-to-ceiling windows offering a breathtaking view of Lake Michigan stretching endlessly into the darkness. Chandeliers cast warm light over the crowd of elegantly dressed professionals, their conversations mixing with soft jazz, music from a live quartet. I recognized most faces from the office, but they looked different in this setting. More glamorous, more confident, as if the formal had transformed them into their idealized selves. I made my way to the bar, ordering a glass of white wine and trying to appear purposeful. "Jessica!" Patricia's voice rang out across the room. She approached with a group of senior managers, her red dress perfectly complementing her confident stride. "Everyone, this is Jessica, one of our administrative staff. She keeps us all organized, don't you, dear?" The group smiled politely and quickly returned to their conversation about market projections and client acquisitions. I felt like an exhibit in a museum, something to be acknowledged briefly before moving on to more interesting displays. "You clean up nicely," Patricia said, her tone suggesting this was somehow surprising. "Though I hope you're not getting any ideas about mingling with the executives. They're discussing business matters that would be over your head." The wine tasted bitter in my mouth. Around us, the party continued its elegant dance of networking and social climbing. I watched young associates pitch ideas to vice presidents, saw secretaries flirting with managers, witnessed the complex hierarchy of corporate politics play out in real time. "Actually," Patricia continued, her voice growing louder as more wine loosened her tongue, "I was just telling the partners about our conversation today, about knowing your place and accepting your limitations." Several people had turned to listen now, sensing drama in the air like predators scenting blood. The jazz quartet played on, oblivious to the tension building near the bar. "Some people have grand ambitions," Patricia said, her smile becoming sharper, "but the reality is that not everyone is cut out for leadership. Jessica here is a perfect example. 4 years in the same position, and she'll probably be there for 4 more. Some people are just meant to be assistants." The words hit me like physical blows. My cheeks burned with embarrassment as muffled laughter rippled through the small crowd that had gathered. Patricia raised her wine glass in a mock toast, her eyes gleaming with malicious satisfaction. "Here's to knowing your place in the world," she declared loudly enough for half the party to hear. I wanted to disappear, to melt into the marble floor and escape the pitying looks and barely concealed smirks. This was worse than being invisible. This was being publicly humiliated, marked as a failure in front of everyone I worked with. The crowd began to disperse, returning to their conversations with renewed energy, as if my humiliation had provided them with fresh gossip to share. Patricia drifted away with her group of managers, leaving me standing alone by the bar with my untouched wine and burning cheeks. I forced myself to walk to the windows, staring out at the snow-covered city below. The lake was invisible in the darkness, but I could feel its vast presence, cold and infinite. Cars moved like tiny lights through the streets, each one carrying someone with their own dreams and disappointments. "Rough night." The voice came from beside me, deep and surprisingly gentle. I turned to see a man I didn't recognize, probably in his 50s, with salt and pepper hair and kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. He wore an impeccably tailored suit that spoke of success and authority, but his manner was approachable, almost grandfatherly. "I'm sorry," I said, not trusting my voice to remain steady. "I couldn't help but overhear what happened back there," he said, nodding toward where Patricia had delivered her crushing assessment. "Office politics can be brutal." "I'm Robert, by the way." "Jessica," I replied automatically, then added, "and yes, it was pretty rough." Robert studied me with an intensity that was neither uncomfortable nor invasive, as if he was genuinely interested in what I had to say. "Tell me, Jessica, what do you actually do here? Besides the administrative work, I mean. What are you passionate about?" The question caught me off guard. No one at Morrison and Associates had ever asked me about my passions or interests. I was defined entirely by my job title and the tasks I performed. I studied business in college," I said hesitantly. "I always thought I might work in project management or maybe business development. I actually have some ideas about improving client retention and streamlining our processes." "Such as?" Robert leaned against the window frame, giving me his full attention. For the next 20 minutes, I found myself explaining concepts I had been developing in my spare time, solutions to problems I had observed during my 4 years at the company. Robert listened intently, asking thoughtful questions and nodding encouragingly. It felt surreal to have someone treat my ideas as valuable, worth discussing seriously. "These are impressive insights," Robert said finally. "You've clearly been paying attention to more than just filing and scheduling." "Not that anyone cares," I said bitterly, the wine in the evening's humiliation loosening my tongue. "Patricia made it clear that I should stick to what I know. According to her, I'll never be more than an assistant." Robert was quiet for a moment, his gaze returning to the city lights below. When he spoke again, his voice carried a weight of authority I hadn't noticed before. "You know, Jessica, I've learned something in my 30 years in business. The people who have the best ideas are often the ones closest to the actual work. They see problems that executives miss, understand inefficiencies that never make it into board reports." He turned to face me fully, and something in his expression had changed. There was a sharpness there now, a calculating intelligence that made me suddenly aware that this wasn't just a casual conversation. "What would you say if I told you I might have an opportunity for someone with your insights? Someone who understands this company from the ground up but isn't afraid to think bigger?" My heart began to race. "I would say that sounds too good to be true." Robert smiled, and for the first time all evening, I felt like someone was seeing me as more than just an assistant who knew her place. "Well, Jessica, sometimes the most unexpected opportunities come from the most difficult moments. Would you be interested in learning more?" As snow continued to fall outside the windows of the Fairmont Chicago, I realized that everything was about to change. The question was whether I would be brave enough to let it happen. Monday morning arrived with the bitter cold that only Chicago could deliver in January. Lake Michigan had frozen along the shoreline, creating a landscape of ice sculptures that stretched toward the horizon. From my apartment window, I could see commuters bundled in heavy coats, their breath forming small clouds as they hurried toward the train station. The weekend had passed in a blur of anxiety and anticipation. Robert's words echoed in my mind constantly, mixing hope with skepticism. People didn't just offer opportunities to administrative assistants at office parties. Things like that didn't happen to people like me. I arrived at Morrison and Associates 15 minutes early, as always, and settled into my familiar corner desk. The office felt different somehow, as if Friday night's humiliation had shifted the very air around me. Colleagues glanced in my direction with expressions ranging from pity to amusement, and I could practically hear the whispered conversations about Patricia's public takedown. "Good morning, sunshine," Patricia chirped as she swept past my desk at exactly 9 o'clock. She looked particularly pleased with herself, her smile carrying the satisfaction of someone who had successfully established the office pecking order. "I trust you enjoyed the party Friday night. Such a lovely event." I forced myself to meet her eyes. "It was memorable." "I'm sure it was," she said, her tone dripping with false sympathy. "Sometimes we all need a reality check, don't we? It helps us focus on what's actually achievable." The morning dragged by with its usual routine of emails, phone calls, and filing. I handled Patricia's calendar, scheduled meetings for the partners, and organized expense reports with mechanical precision. My mind kept wandering to Robert and his mysterious offer, but as the hours passed, I began to convince myself it had been nothing more than polite conversation from a kind stranger. At 11:30, my phone rang. The caller ID showed an external number I didn't recognize. "Morrison and Associates, this is Jessica." "Jessica, this is Robert from Friday night. I hope you don't mind me calling you at work." My heart immediately began racing. Around me, the office continued its normal rhythm, but suddenly everything felt charged with possibility. "No, not at all," I said, lowering my voice and glancing around to make sure no one was listening. "I've been thinking about our conversation, and I'd like to meet with you today if possible. Are you free for lunch?" The request was so unexpected that I almost dropped the phone. "Lunch? Today? There's a small cafe called Corner Bakery on West Madison, about 3 blocks from your office. Could you meet me there at 12:30? I looked at my computer screen, seeing Patricia's afternoon schedule filled with meetings that would require my attention. But something in Robert's voice suggested this wasn't a casual invitation. "Yes," I heard myself saying. "I can make that work." "Excellent. Jessica, Don't mention this meeting to anyone at your office just yet. I'll explain why when we talk. The line went dead, leaving me staring at the phone with a mixture of excitement and terror. A secret lunch, meeting with a mysterious man who had shown interest in my ideas. It sounded like the beginning of either a great opportunity or a complete disaster. I spent the next hour trying to focus on work while my mind raced with possibilities. Who was Robert really? What kind of opportunity could he possibly have for an administrative assistant? And why the secrecy? At 12:15, I grabbed my coat and told Patricia I was going to lunch. "Don't be long," she said without looking up from her computer. "I need you to prepare the conference room for the 2:00 meeting with the Henderson account." The walk to Corner Bakery took me through the heart of Chicago's business district. The streets were crowded with lunchgoers despite the cold, everyone moving with the purposeful urgency that defined the city's professional class. Steam rose from manholes, creating ethereal curtains that parted as pedestrians passed through them. Corner Bakery was warm and inviting, with the rich aroma of fresh bread and coffee creating a sharp contrast to the harsh winter air outside. I spotted Robert immediately, sitting at a corner table with a clear view of the entrance. He wore a charcoal gray suit that looked even more expensive in daylight, and he was reading what appeared to be a financial report. "Jessica, thank you for coming," he said, standing to greet me. "Please sit. Can I get you something to eat?" I ordered a soup and sandwich, my appetite dampened by nerves. Robert waited until we were settled with our food before speaking again. "I want to start by apologizing for the mysterious nature of this meeting," he said, his voice quiet but clear. "I also need to be completely honest with you about who I am." My spoon paused halfway to my mouth. "Who you are?" Robert reached into his jacket and pulled out a business card, sliding it across the table. I picked it up with trembling fingers and felt the blood drain from my face. "Robert Mitchell, Chief Executive Officer, Morrison and Associates." "You're—" I couldn't finish the sentence. "I'm your CEO, yes. I know this is probably overwhelming." I stared at the business card, then at Robert, then back at the card. The man I had spent 20 minutes complaining to about my job was actually the head of the entire company. The man I had told about Patricia's humiliating comments was Patricia's ultimate boss. "Oh God," I whispered. "I am so sorry. I had no idea. If I had known who you were, I never would have said those things about the company, about Patricia." Robert held up a hand. "Jessica, please. You have nothing to apologize for. In fact, your honesty is exactly why I wanted to meet with you." The cafe buzzed with lunch conversation around us, but I felt as if we were in a bubble, isolated from the normal world. "I don't understand." "Let me explain," Robert said. "I've been CEO of Morrison and Associates for 8 years. It's easy to lose touch with the day-to-day reality of how a business actually functions." He paused to take a sip of his coffee. "About 6 months ago, I started noticing some troubling trends. Client retention was down, employee satisfaction surveys showed concerning patterns, and our junior staff turnover was higher than industry standards. I couldn't figure out where the problems were coming from." "So you decided to go undercover at your own Christmas party?" I asked, still struggling to process the situation. Robert smiled. "Not exactly undercover, but I do make it a point to attend company events without making a big production of my presence." "You told me what you actually observed." The implications began to sink in. "You heard everything Patricia said to me." "I did. And more importantly, I heard how you responded. Your insights about client retention, process improvement, employee development, these weren't generic business school theories. They were specific solutions based on real observation and analysis." I felt a flush of embarrassment mixed with pride. "I've just been working here for 4 years. You see things when you're in the support role." "Exactly." Robert leaned back in his chair. "Jessica, I've been looking for someone to head up a new initiative I'm launching. Someone who understands our operations from the ground up but has the vision to see beyond current limitations. Someone who isn't already entrenched in management politics and existing hierarchies." My heart was pounding, so hard I was sure he could hear it. "What kind of initiative?" "I'm creating a new position. Director of Operational Excellence. It would involve analyzing our current processes, identifying inefficiencies, implementing improvements, and managing change across all departments. It's a senior management role reporting directly to me." The world seemed to tilt on its axis. Director? But I'm just an assistant. You're someone who has been systematically undervalued and overlooked despite having exceptional insights and abilities, Robert corrected. The question is, are you ready to step into something bigger? I thought about Patricia's cruel words, about 4 years of being treated as invisible, about watching less qualified people advance while I remained trapped behind the same desk. What about Patricia? I asked. What about my current position? Robert's expression hardened slightly. Let me be clear about something, Jessica. The way Patricia treated you Friday night was completely unacceptable. I've been reviewing Patricia's management style and her department's performance metrics. There will be changes made, but that's not your concern. Your concern should be whether you're ready to take on a challenge that will completely transform your career. The offer was so far beyond anything I had imagined that it felt surreal. Director of Operational Excellence, a senior management position, reporting directly to the CEO. I don't have an MBA, I said weakly. I don't have management experience. You have 4 years of direct observation of this company's operations. You have insights that MBA programs don't teach. You have the intelligence to see solutions that experienced managers miss because they're too close to existing systems. Robert pulled out a folder and slid it across the table. This is a formal offer letter. The salary is triple what you're currently making. You'd have your own office, an assistant, and a budget for implementing improvements. You'd also have my full support and access to any resources you need. I opened the folder with shaking hands. The numbers on the salary line made me dizzy. This wasn't just a promotion, it was a complete transformation of my life. There's one condition, Robert continued. This has to remain completely confidential until I make the official announcement next Monday. I don't want word getting back to your current department before I've had a chance to handle the transition properly. I stared at the offer letter, my mind racing. This morning I had been an invisible administrative assistant. Now I was looking at an offer that would vault me into senior management overnight. Why me? I asked. You could hire someone with experience, someone with credentials. Robert smiled. Because I saw the look in your eyes Friday night when you were talking about your ideas. That wasn't the look of someone who's content to remain an assistant forever. That was the look of someone who's been waiting for a chance to prove what they're really capable of. The walk back to Morrison and Associates felt like a dream. I spent the afternoon handling Patricia's requests with mechanical precision, but my mind was entirely focused on Robert's offer. Director of Operational Excellence. My own office. The respect that came with a senior management title. By the time I reached my apartment, I knew my answer. The next morning, I arrived at the office early and immediately called Robert's number. Good morning, Jessica. I'm hoping you have an answer for me. I pulled the signed offer letter from my purse. Yes, I do. I accept your offer. I'm very pleased to hear that. Can you meet me in my office at 11? It's on the 45th floor. Tell Patricia you have an urgent errand to run. The elevator ride to the 45th floor felt like ascending to another world. The executive floor was elegantly appointed with marble floors, mahogany paneling, and artwork that looked expensive and original. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered breathtaking views. Margaret, the receptionist, greeted me warmly and directed me in. Jessica, please come in, Robert said, standing from behind his desk. How are you feeling about everything? Nervous, I admitted, but excited, also terrified. He smiled. That's exactly the right combination of emotions for someone about to take on a significant challenge. The people who are most likely to succeed in leadership roles are often the ones who question their own readiness. The difference between those who succeed and those who don't isn't the absence of fear. It's the willingness to act despite the fear. We spent the next hour going through the details of my new position. Robert explained the timeline. Today, we'll finalize your employment agreement. Thursday, I'll announce the new position to the senior management team. Monday, we'll make the company-wide announcement and you'll transition into your new role. My first 90 days would focus on assessment and planning. I signed the final documents. I won't let you down. I don't think you will. Now, you should get back to your desk before Patricia becomes suspicious. We'll talk again Thursday morning before the announcement. The elevator ride back to the 20th floor felt like descending from Mount Olympus to the mortal world. The familiar hallways and standard office furniture seemed shabby after the elegance of the executive floor, but they also felt temporary now. Patricia was waiting when I returned, her expression impatient. Finally, I need you to set up the Henderson conference room immediately. They've moved the meeting up to 12:15. The afternoon passed slowly. Patricia held her meeting with the Henderson account, discussing quarterly projections and service renewals while I took notes and managed logistics. The routine tasks felt surreal knowing that by next week, someone else would be handling these responsibilities while I attended meetings as a participant rather than a supporter. Wednesday arrived with freezing rain that turned the city into a treacherous ice rink. I arrived at the office to find Patricia in an unusually foul mood. One of her major clients had threatened to take their business elsewhere after a billing dispute, and she was frantically trying to smooth over the situation. "Jessica, I need you to pull all the Henderson account files from the past 18 months, she snapped. I spent the morning compiling the requested information. As 5 o'clock approached, Patricia finally left her office, her face drawn with stress. "I'm going home. If anyone from Henderson calls, take a detailed message and email it to me immediately." I watched her leave, thinking about how quickly circumstances could change. Yesterday, she had been smugly confident, publicly humiliating me at the Christmas party. Today, she was scrambling to save a major account. Tomorrow, she would discover that her assistant had been promoted to a position that ranked above her own. Thursday morning dawned clear and cold. I dressed more carefully than usual, choosing my best suit. It was still my administrative assistant wardrobe, but it would be the last day I would wear it in that role. At 8:45, my phone rang. "Robert." "Good morning, Jessica. The senior management meeting starts in 15 minutes. I'd like you to come up to the executive floor now." I followed him into the main conference room. 12 pairs of eyes turned to look at me, expressions ranging from curious to confused. Patricia was there, sitting near the middle of the table, her face registering shock at seeing her assistant enter a senior management meeting. "I've called this meeting to announce a significant organizational change. I've determined that we need a dedicated senior leadership position focused specifically on operational excellence." Patricia's eyes had gone wide. She was staring at me with an expression that mixed confusion with dawning horror. "I'm pleased to announce that I've created the position of Director of Operational Excellence, reporting directly to me. I'm even more pleased to announce that Jessica Thompson has accepted this position and will assume her new responsibilities effective immediately." The silence that followed was absolute. Every face in the room registered shock, but Patricia's expression was the look of someone whose entire worldview had just been shattered. Jessica has spent 4 years in our operations department, during which time she has demonstrated exceptional analytical abilities. Her promotion is based entirely on merit and potential. Jessica will be conducting a comprehensive operational review over the next 90 days. Her authority to implement changes comes directly from this office. My concerns about certain aspects of our current management culture, talent recognition, and employee development will be key focus areas for her review. What departments will be included in her operational review? "All of them," Robert said flatly. "No exceptions. Everything will be examined." Patricia had gone pale. She hadn't said a word. I met her eyes, feeling a strange mixture of sympathy and satisfaction. I have 4 years of direct operational experience and insights that apparently the CEO values. That's qualification enough. "Robert is making a mistake," she hissed. "You're going to fail spectacularly." Before I could respond, Robert appeared beside us. "Patricia, I'd like to see you in my office." "Now." Patricia followed Robert without another word. Margaret appeared in the doorway. That was quite an entrance. "Come on, let me show you your new office. It's right down the hall." My office was smaller than Robert's but still impressive. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered views. Yesterday, I had been sitting in a corner cubicle, treated as invisible. Today I had my own office on the executive floor. Around noon, Patricia emerged from Robert's office. Her face was blotchy. I learned later that Robert had placed her on administrative leave, pending a review of her management practices and the Henderson account situation. Robert stopped by my office at 4 o'clock. "The truth is, Jessica, your promotion is about more than just operational improvements. It's about changing our company culture to recognize and develop talent regardless of where it currently sits in the hierarchy. Tomorrow at 11, we'll make the company-wide announcement. That's when things get real. Are you ready? Yes, I said. I'm ready. Friday morning arrived with the kind of brilliant winter sunshine that makes Chicago's lakefront sparkle like diamonds on water. I dressed in one of the new outfits the personal shopper had helped me select. The tailored suit fit perfectly, transforming my appearance from competent assistant to confident executive. The commute felt surreal. I was traveling the same route I had taken for 4 years, but everything had shifted. My office was exactly as I had left it yesterday, but it felt more real now, less like a dream. At 10:30, I walked to Robert's office. Expect surprise, skepticism, and a lot of gossip. Most people have never heard your name before today. At 11 o'clock, Robert began speaking. I've called this meeting to announce an important organizational change that reflects our commitment to operational excellence and continuous improvement. He gestured toward me, and suddenly every eye in the room turned in my direction. I'm pleased to introduce Jessica Thompson, who has accepted this position and will begin her new responsibilities immediately. The murmuring started immediately. Many of you are wondering who I am. I began. For the past 4 years, I've worked in the operations department as an administrative assistant. The confusion in the room deepened. I understand that my promotion is unconventional. What I do have is 4 years of direct observation of how this company actually functions on a day-to-day basis. I showed data on client retention trends. During my time in operations, I've watched us lose clients because of communication breakdowns that could have been prevented. I've observed inefficiencies that cost us time, money, and competitive advantage. I outlined my assessment methodology. Over the next 90 days, I'll be conducting a comprehensive operational review. It's about identifying opportunities to make our company more efficient, more competitive, and a better place to work. When I finished, Robert returned to the podium. Jessica will have my full support and authority to access any information she needs and implement recommended changes. Several colleagues from my old department approached hesitantly. That's the advantage of being invisible, I said with a slight smile. People don't guard their conversations around you. You see things that others miss. One particularly memorable visit came from Gerald, a vice president in client services. I'll be honest with you, Jessica. I think Robert is making a mistake. No offense, but administrative assistants don't become directors overnight in successful companies. You focus on strategy without fully understanding the tactical execution. I've spent 4 years watching tactical execution. I've seen where the gaps are. Gerald stood abruptly. We'll see how your theories hold up against reality. Don't expect me to change 15 years of proven practices based on observations from an assistant. He's not the last person who's going to resist this, I said to Margaret. No, but he's also not representative of everyone. You've got more support than you might think. Over the next 8 weeks, I threw myself into the operational review with intensity. The patterns I had suspected during my assistant days became clearly visible in the comprehensive data. Communication silos, redundant approval processes. On a Friday morning in early March, I presented my findings to the senior management team. What I've found is both concerning and encouraging. Concerning because our current inefficiencies are costing us approximately $2 million annually. Encouraging because every problem I identified has a practical, achievable solution. The presentation lasted 90 minutes. Then Thomas, the CFO, began to applaud. This is exceptional work, the most thorough and practical analysis I've seen. Even Mitchell, who had been resistant from the beginning, nodded slowly. I can't argue with the data. You've clearly done your homework. Robert looked around the table. Jessica, you've exceeded even my high expectations. This is exactly the kind of transformative work I knew you were capable of. The results started appearing in measurable metrics within 6 weeks. Client retention rates improved by 12%. Employee satisfaction surveys showed marked increases. Operational costs decreased while productivity metrics climbed. More importantly, the culture began to shift. Managers who had been skeptical became advocates. Employees who had felt invisible found their voices heard. On a warm day in late May, Robert called me to his office. First, Patricia will not be returning to the company. Second, we're promoting Christine to manager of operations. Third, the board has been so impressed with your work that they've asked me to expand your role. We're creating a vice president position for organizational development. I stared at him. Vice president? Robert, I've only been a director for 4 months. And in those 4 months, you've delivered more tangible value than some executives deliver in years. Jessica, this isn't about timeline. It's about results and demonstrated capability. You're going to face resistance, but the board and I are in complete agreement that you've earned this opportunity. That evening, I stood at the windows of my new office. I thought about the Christmas party 6 months ago, about Patricia's cruel assessment that I would never be more than an assistant. The journey from that moment to this one had been terrifying, exhilarating, and transformative. My phone buzzed with a text message. It was from Christine. To Jessica, who proved that you don't need fancy credentials to have brilliant ideas. I had been given a chance that most people in my position never received. Now it was my responsibility to ensure that chance extended to others. The following Monday brought my first executive committee meeting as Vice President of Organizational Development. I sat at the long conference table alongside executives who made decisions affecting hundreds of employees and millions of dollars in business. Gerald, the vice president who had been openly skeptical of my initial promotion, was notably absent. Robert mentioned casually during the meeting that Gerald had decided to pursue opportunities elsewhere, his traditional management style no longer aligning with the company's evolving culture. When my turn came to present, I outlined an ambitious vision for organizational development that went beyond process improvement to cultural transformation. Creating mentorship programs, implementing transparent promotion criteria, establishing innovation channels. The changes we've made over the past 4 months have proven that this company has tremendous untapped potential, I said. My proposal is to fundamentally reimagine how we recognize, develop, and promote our people. The discussion that followed was intense and productive. By the end of the meeting, we had reached consensus on a phased rollout. Robert pulled me aside. That was impressive. You're operating at this level as if you've been doing it for years. I'm terrified every single day that someone will realize I'm making half of this up as I go along, I admitted. He laughed. Jessica, that's the secret every executive learns eventually. The difference between good leaders and poor ones isn't having all the answers. It's being willing to learn, adapt, and admit when you don't know something. Over the following months, my organizational development initiatives began transforming Morrison and Associates in visible, measurable ways. The mentorship program connected 50 junior employees with senior leaders. Transparent promotion criteria led to a wave of well-deserved advancements. But the most meaningful changes were harder to quantify. Employees throughout the company began to believe that their ideas mattered. I received emails almost daily from people sharing their stories. Each story reinforced the core principle. Talent and valuable insights existed everywhere in an organization if leadership was willing to look beyond traditional indicators and genuinely listen. In August, Morrison and Associates held its annual leadership summit. I was scheduled to deliver the keynote address on the first evening. A year ago, I attended our annual Christmas party as an administrative assistant. That night, my supervisor publicly declared that I would never be more than an assistant. The past 8 months have proven something critically important. Talent and valuable insights exist throughout every organization, regardless of job title or traditional credentials. The question is whether leadership is willing to look for it, develop it, and create systems that allow it to flourish. The presentation continued for 45 minutes. I shared my own story not as inspiration, but as evidence that conventional thinking about talent identification and development was leaving enormous value untapped. Christine found me near the end of the evening. You know what the most amazing part of your story is? It's not that you got promoted. It's that you used your promotion to create pathways for other people. By the time autumn arrived in Chicago, client retention had improved to industry-leading levels. Employee satisfaction surveys showed the highest scores in company history. Revenue had grown by 18% year over year. In November, I received an invitation to speak at a national business conference about organizational development and talent management. I thought about the journey that had brought me to this moment. 12 months ago, I had been an invisible administrative assistant. Today I was a vice president addressing a national audience about transforming organizational culture. I had proven that talent could emerge from unexpected places if leadership was willing to look beyond traditional indicators. My success wasn't about being exceptional. It was about being given an opportunity to demonstrate capabilities that had always existed but had never been recognized or developed. That evening, I walked along the Chicago River. My phone buzzed with a text from Robert. "Excellent presentation today. We should talk soon about your future with the company." The Christmas party that year was held at the same venue as the previous year. I arrived not as an invisible assistant nursing cheap wine by the windows, but as a vice president and member of the executive committee. Christine appeared beside me. To Jessica Thompson, who proved that knowing your place sometimes means refusing to accept the limitations others try to impose. I touched my glass to hers, smiling at the irony. Patricia had been right about one thing. I had needed to know my place. But my place hadn't been behind an assistant's desk, invisible and undervalued. My place had been wherever I had the courage to claim it. The journey from invisible assistant to vice president had been extraordinary, but the real victory wasn't the title, or the salary, or the corner office. The real victory was knowing that I had used my success to create a better, fairer system for everyone who came after me. Patricia had been wrong about knowing my place, because I had finally discovered that my place wasn't defined by others' limitations or expectations. My place was wherever I chose to stand, and whatever I had the courage to reach for. 1 year from invisible assistant to vice president. It shouldn't have been possible, but it had happened, and that made all the difference.